They say nature has rules, laws written into the bones of the earth, the breath of the wind, and the fragile rhythm of life itself. But once, in the deep valleys of Appalachia, a single family decided those rules did not apply to them. Their defiance began not with greed nor madness, but with desperation, a hunger to survive in a place that forgot how to feed its own. It started in 1894, when the first frost came too early, killing the crops and the livestock in the hills of West Virginia. The locals called it the Winter of the White Death. The Reddin family, 8 souls living in a cabin built from rotting pine, were said to be the last to hold out when everyone else fled down the mountain. They stayed, they endured, but what they became was something else entirely. Hello everyone, before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. By the time the thaw came, only 3 Reddins remained. No one saw them for months after, until a drifter wandered into town, shaking, eyes hollow, mumbling about voices in the trees and a woman with red hands. The sheriff went up the mountain. He came down alone, pale as chalk, and refused to speak of what he'd seen. For years, the story lingered like a splinter in the town's memory, whispered in bars, told in the schoolyard, but never written down. Those who lived nearby said the Reddins were cursed, that they'd turned against nature, and nature, in return, had turned against them. A century later, a team of biologists would stumble upon the ruins of that cabin while conducting soil tests for mining expansion. What they found buried beneath the foundation didn't belong to any known animal or any known era. The bones were twisted, reshaped, as if evolution itself had taken a wrong turn and kept going. This is the story of how one American family tried to survive the impossible, and in doing so, broke the covenant of life itself. A story the earth tried to bury, a story the wind still whispers to those who listen too closely, because what the Reddins became wasn't human. Not entirely. There are still people who live near the base of Black Hollow Ridge. Old-timers mostly, those who remember the stories their fathers told them beside wood stoves and kerosene lamps. When asked about the Reddin place, they don't point. They don't speak. They just lower their eyes and murmur. Some things don't rot the way they should. The oldest records of the family paint a picture of ordinary hardship. William Reddin, a coal miner turned farmer. His wife, Eliza, the daughter of a preacher who once claimed to hear angels in the thunder. Their 6 children, strong, pale, quiet, church attendance, tax payments, crop reports, all as expected. Nothing strange until 1894, when the cold came too soon. The last entry in the town ledger was dated December 2nd of that year. Reddin family requests no further aid. After that silence, it was nearly 2 years later when a hunter found their land again. The cabin was still standing, but the ground was wrong, soft, like it had been breathing. Inside, they found no bodies, only carvings on the walls, spirals and symbols that looked burned into the wood, and on the far wall etched deep enough to crack the logs. "We are of the root now." The county sent men to clear it. They burned the house, salted the ground, declared the area uninhabitable. But within weeks, animals started dying in the nearby woods. Deer were found with missing eyes, their ribs growing inward, like the forest was trying to reclaim them. Locals said the soil had turned alive. Then came the dreams. Entire families moved away, claiming they woke to whispers under their floors, like someone was digging upward. The few who stayed told of seeing shapes in the fog, not animals, not human, just shadows that watched. The official story: contaminated groundwater, hallucinations caused by methane pockets. That's what the county wrote. But anyone who's ever stood on that ridge knows the truth doesn't stay buried in paper. It seeps up through the dirt, it breathes through the cracks. And every November, when the frost sets in again, the earth around the ridge grows warm, as if remembering what it once held. The Reddin name should have ended there, swallowed by the land, forgotten by time. But it didn't. Decades later, their blood surfaced again miles away, in a small town that didn't yet know it was cursed. In 1937, a government census worker named Clara Mayfield noticed something strange in the birth records of Boone County. A cluster of families, all claiming descent from miners who died in the winter of '94, all with missing documentation before that year. And among them, a surname that had quietly resurfaced: Reddin. Clara was meticulous. She followed paper trails the way others followed superstition. The deeper she looked, the stranger it became. Every Reddin descendant she found shared a peculiar trait, an unusual resistance to sickness, wounds that healed too fast, blood that clotted unnaturally quick. The doctors called it a biological anomaly. The locals called it the devil's gift. One man, Thomas Reddin, a blacksmith by trade, once survived being pinned under a collapsed beam for 3 days. When they dug him out, his body bore no sign of decay, only faint red marks on his skin, like veins drawn by fire. He lived another 40 years, never aged past 50. But that wasn't what frightened Clara most. In the church archives, she found an unsent letter, dated 1902, written by Reverend Caleb Reddin, William's youngest son. The letter was meant for a seminary in Richmond. Its words were uneven, trembling. The body changes when the soul grows cold. The root feeds where blood is spilled. We can feel the mountains pulse in our sleep. He ended the letter with a line that still chills those who've read it. Mother says we are what the earth wanted. Its experiment to start again. Clara never filed her report. Within weeks she was gone. The room she rented was found empty, her papers burned to ash, save for one scrap fused to the floorboards. It read, "The soil remembers. Today Boone County is quiet, but the Reddin descendants, what few remain, refuse to live near one another. They say bad things happen when they gather. And every so often, a coroner will note something unusual. A bone that doesn't match the body, a blood type that shifts mid-autopsy. The official cause, data error, misfiled record. Always something simple, always something human. But the Reddins stopped being human a long time ago. By the 1950s, the Reddin bloodline had scattered across 3 states, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, like seeds carried on a poisoned wind. Most of them didn't even know who they were. The name had been buried under marriages, misspellings, and fear. But something followed them, something that didn't care about names. Reports began to surface in rural newspapers, odd, local stories that barely made it past the county line. A farmer whose cattle were found standing in a circle at dawn, their eyes filmed white. A child born without a heartbeat who began crying 3 hours later. A woman who vanished in her sleep, leaving only a hollow impression in the mattress, as if the earth had gently reclaimed her. Each story was separate, meaningless on its own, until a journalist named Daniel Crow started connecting the dots. He saw the lineage, the patterns, the way every incident circled back to one family, or rather, what was left of it. Daniel wrote to a colleague in Washington, "They aren't evolving forward, they're evolving backward, becoming something older, something the earth still remembers." But Daniel didn't publish his article. Weeks later, he went missing during a storm outside Hazard, Kentucky. When they found his car, the passenger seat was soaked through, not with rainwater, but with mud, thick and warm as if it had been alive. That same week, a miner reported hearing voices beneath the ground, not echoes, voices, whispering his name from within the coal seam. When he pressed his ear to the rock, he said it sounded like breathing, slow, steady, endless. He quit that night, never went back. The mine collapsed 2 months later. Those who still remember the Reddins say this is what happens when the earth tries to correct a mistake. They say the family didn't just survive the famine. They merged with it, became part of something older than hunger, older than man. There's a superstition in those hills now. If you find yourself alone at night and the ground feels soft beneath your feet, you don't move. You don't breathe, you wait. Because sometimes the land shifts, not with wind or water, but with memory. And if you listen long enough, you'll hear it too. The heartbeat of something buried, still waiting for its kin to return. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Because by now you understand, this isn't just folklore, it's a pattern, a cycle. And like every curse that crawls through American soil, it always finds its way home. In 1971, a geologist named Henry Lasker led a team into the lower ridges of Boone County to conduct a mineral survey for the state. What they discovered was not in any geological textbook. Beneath the shale, embedded in what should have been millions of years of compacted sediment, were traces of human DNA, modern intact, preserved as if it had only been there for days. But the sample was deeper than any human remains could naturally reach, almost 200 feet down. When Lasker returned from the expedition, his colleagues noticed the change first. He spoke slower, as though thinking through someone else's mouth. He began spending nights in the woods barefoot, muttering about the rhythm under the frost. His final note, scribbled on the back of a survey map, simply read, "The ground remembers the shape of us." He vanished soon after. The state sealed the excavation site. Official report, methane explosion. But there's a recording, the last thing Lasker ever sent to his assistant before he disappeared. His voice is shaking, distorted, almost consumed by static. "It isn't death down there," he whispers. "It's continuation. Something kept breathing after the world forgot how." Then silence, followed by a faint, wet sound like mud being exhaled. To this day, that recording isn't public, but copies circulate in private archives, passed like contraband between those obsessed with the Reddin mystery. Some say if you slow it down enough, you can hear a second voice beneath his, a woman's voice, saying something that sounds like, "Come back to the root." The strangest part, every Reddin descendant alive today has, at one point, reported the same dream. A forest with no light, soil pulsing beneath their feet, and a whisper rising through the ground that sounds like blood moving through veins. No matter where they run, the dream finds them. Tell me, if this was your bloodline, if your very existence carried something the world had tried to bury, would you run from it, or would you listen? In 1999, long after the Reddin story had faded into campfire whispers and late-night radio chatter, a storm unearthed what the county had buried. Heavy rains carved a scar down the side of Black Hollow Ridge, splitting the soil open like a wound. What came to the surface wasn't bone, not entirely. It was something between flesh and fossil, tissue hardened like stone, veins filled with mineral threads that pulsed faintly when touched. The sheriff at the time, Mark Hanlon, was a practical man. No superstition, no nonsense. But when he arrived at the scene, the first words he reportedly said were, "Cover it. Don't let the air see it." Samples were sent to a university lab in Charleston. Within a week, the building burned. The cause was ruled electrical failure. Every person who'd handled the remains either left the state or withdrew from public work, and the samples, gone. Yet one photograph survived. A blurred Polaroid showing a curve of something that could have been a rib, except it bent inward, almost looping, as if trying to return to itself. Across the bottom of the image, someone had written in pen, "She's still under us." In the years since, that phrase has become a quiet omen among locals. The shit, they say, refers to Eliza Reddin, the matriarch, the woman whose faith broke before her family did, the preacher's daughter who whispered prayers to the soil when heaven stopped answering. Some even claim she's still alive, not in the way we understand life, but as something fused with the land itself. Every generation or so, a Reddin child is born with soil under their fingernails. Doctors call it a condition, the families call it a reminder. When the wind cuts through those hills in winter, it carries a strange resonance, a low hum, almost like a voice moving through stone. Old-timers say that's her breath, sighing through the mountain, keeping her children near. There's a reason the forest grows thicker there, darker, even when the rest of the ridge is bare. It's feeding something that never stopped growing. Something that remembers the sound of human blood and the warmth of defiance. And maybe that's why no map marks the old Reddin land anymore. Not because it's lost, but because it's still waiting to be found. There's a stretch of road that winds through Boone County where the GPS stops working and the air turns heavy, thick, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Locals call it the root line. It runs past where the Reddin cabin once stood, though no trace of it remains. Travelers who take that road after dark report strange things: engines stalling, clocks freezing at 3:17 a.m., and a faint knocking from beneath the asphalt. Rhythmic, deliberate, alive. Some think it's just the shifting of old mining tunnels, but others know better. They say that's the Reddins, or what's left of them, still moving beneath the surface, still breathing in time with the earth. Every so often, a newcomer builds too close to the ridge. The pattern never changes. First, their wells turn red, not with rust, but with something thicker. Then come the dreams, the woman in the fog, whispering, "We kept our promise, you must too." And then, silence, the kind that feels wrong, as if the world has gone deaf to its own sound. You see, the Reddin family didn't just defy nature's rules. They rewrote them. They found a way to keep living when life itself had moved on. And in doing so, they became something eternal, a bridge between decay and creation. Not ghosts, not monsters, Just proof that survival sometimes demands more than the human body was ever meant to give. Historians won't talk about it. Scientists dismiss it. But every record, every vanished witness, every whispered warning points to one truth buried beneath American soil: nature is not merciful. It is cyclical. It remembers. And sometimes it calls its children home. If you ever find yourself on that ridge, and the ground feels warm beneath your feet, remember what you've heard tonight. Don't dig. Don't run. Don't listen too closely. Because the Reddins are still there, in the roots, in the frost, in the slow pulse of the mountain. And if the whisper finds you, if you feel the breath of something ancient curling through the soil, do not answer it. Just keep walking. Because once you hear the heartbeat of the earth, it starts to hear yours, too.